I think by this point we've all heard the joke, how do you get a guitar player to stop playing? You put sheet music in front of them. Today I've got 5 tips to help that not be the case for you. So come on, let's check it out. Alright, so in this video we're not going to cover how to read the actual staff itself. I'm assuming you're already somewhat familiar with that and you're just looking for tips to apply that to the instrument itself. So hopefully with these 5 tips that can help you out. That being said, the guitar is actually a really difficult instrument to read music on because unlike the piano or instruments like that where there's one spot to play each note, the guitar or stringed instruments like this have multiple spots to play each note. What I mean by that is the C, for example, you can play there, 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 or there. So it can become overwhelming and overly complicated really quickly as to what's the best place to play it and which one you're supposed to play, and it's too much to think about. So let's get right into it. Tip number 1 is to split your fretboard in half. What I want you to do is split your fretboard at the 12th fret. So you're only looking at the open string all the way up to the 12th fret. So remember, everything higher, you can play the same fingerings you can down here on the lower frets. Just add 12 frets to your starting fret and you get the same notes, just an octave higher. So let's take this out of play for right now and just focus with the lower half of the fretboard. Tip number 2 is to find each note on each string, or at least each natural note. Let's take the first string, for example. You have E on the open string, F is your first fret, G is the 3rd fret, A is the 5th, B is the 7th, C is the 8th, D is the 10th, and then your E again is 12th. So what you should notice is there's a note in between each note except for E and F and B and C. Depending on what key you're playing in, they're going to be called one of 2 names. They can either be a sharp name. So sharp means to raise the note. So if it's an F sharp, for example, that means find your F. They're going to go to the 2nd fret. If it's a G flat, flat means lower, so you're going to go find your G and lower it 1 fret. So again, you're on the 2nd fret. So each note has 2 different names that are sharp or flat notes, depending on the key you're in and the direction that you're going, if you're ascending or descending. So that's tip 2. Learn every note on every string, or at least the natural notes on each string, just to have a reference. And while you're doing that, you should notice that each note is only in one spot for each string. So again, you're limiting your possibilities to make it easier overall. So that F, for example, is only on the 1st fret when we're going up to the 12th fret. It's just there. And the G is just here on the 3rd fret. Tip number 3 is to group each register together. So what I mean by that is find either a half an octave or a whole octave, depending on the register you're in. For instance, that's half an octave, so C to G, and then back down. That's one spot you can play it. Another spot you can play it, but in the same register, or the same notes, would be here on the 5th fret. And then the last place you could play it is here on the 10th fret. You could also do it for the lower registers. For example, here on the 3rd fret of the 5th string. It's the same notes, just an octave lower, or you could do it here on the 8th fret. So find your groupings like that and use those as a guide to help you play in different keys. Tip number 4 is to find your octaves. It could be said to find all your intervals at the same time, but I think finding the octaves is the best guides to start with. So doing this, again, limiting yourself to just the first 12 frets, you're going to have 3 different octaves or registers that you're dealing with. So I'm going to use the note A for this example. So on the 6th string, it's on the 5th fret. On the 5th string, it's the open string, or the 12th fret. I'm going to use the open string for this example. The 4th string is the 7th fret. The 3rd string is the 2nd fret. The 2nd string is the 10th fret. And then the 1st string is the 5th fret again. Going through that, you get 3 different octaves. You get the ones on the 5th and 6th string, the middle ones on the 3rd and 4th strings, and the higher register on the 1st and 2nd strings. So learn those to where you can be able to just breeze through them really easily without having to think about it too much. While you're learning it, just limit yourself to just the lower portion of the neck, and then you can apply the higher portion later. Tip number 5 is to find the best fingering for what you're playing. Really, where the meat and potatoes of guitar lies is in fingerings. It's the same no matter what you're playing. You can be playing metal music or rock music or jazz or anything. It doesn't matter. Finding a good fingering is really going to help you out tremendously. This one kind of goes along with the first video for the unlocking the fretboard that I put up. So I'll have a link to that up here in the top if you are unfamiliar with that. That video is talking about major scale fingerings. Those can be applied here, but again, whatever key you're in, you just would slide it around. I'm going to use a little piece of music here just as an example. That is just, if we analyze it, is a C major arpeggio. Then it goes B, G, A, E. Playing it in that octave, you have a few different areas you can play it in. You can play it here, or fingerings rather. You can play it like this. Or you could play it up here on the 8th fret. Or if you wanted to take it up an octave, you, for instance, could play it up here. So those would be examples of good fingerings to use for that specific piece. So an example of a bad fingering for that would be something like this. The reason why that's a bad fingering is, 1, you're jumping around, but 2, you're playing things a little inconsistently. So for instance, this E and the G, we're playing here, and then you have to jump way up here to the high C, and then you're playing the G here, and A, and then you're playing the E again there, or on the 5th fret. When you have a big jump like that, or a big stretch on guitar, usually there's an easier way to play it. So the easiest spot to play it in that register would be here, or an area like that where it's all grouped together and there's no big stretches or anything. The next example I'm going to give you of this type of fingering is an example where you want to let notes ring out. For example, this is from the song Lagrima by Francisco Tárrega. It's just a little excerpt of it. It goes like this. So that fingering is kind of weird. So we're hitting that open string for the E, and then kind of working our way back down. The reason why I use that fingering is you can let the notes kind of ring together. So you get this kind of cascading, or the notes ringing into each other. We could play it with a normal fingering, but it doesn't give you quite the same effect that you get with all the notes ringing together. So that's another thing to take into consideration, is how is the fingering suiting the music. If it needs to ring together, find a way where you can use either open strings or multiple strings and let everything kind of ring together versus multiple notes on the same string, like in a scale passage. I hope these 5 tips helped you and give you a little bit more insight as to how you can effectively read music on guitar. If you liked the video, give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing, so I'll have more lessons and all kinds of fun stuff out in the future. Also, down in the description, remember, you can find my website or all my social media accounts if you want to get in contact with me or find out more information about anything I do, or if you're interested in lessons or anything like that. Hope you'll have a great day. See you later.